Hey everyone, welcome back to Sophomore Citizens. I'm Gigi.
I'm Liesel.
And I'm Lilly. So, for today's check in, we are going to be talking about something very exciting that is in the future of our Sophomore Citizens podcast. So, wise babies, listen up. Liesel, please tell us what this fun, exciting announcement is.
We will be introducing a book club, the Sophomore Citizens Book Club, and we will be doing an episode at the end of January. This might end up becoming a regular thing that we do a couple of times depending on how we feel about it. But this is something I'm really passionate about, and I thought would be super fun for us to kick off the year by all reading the same book at around the same time and then talking about it, thinking about it, discussing, and just really like having a fun, immersive experience with reading this book with each other and with our whole community in general. And this is an episode that if you can't finish the book before we release the episode, you can always take your time on the book and come back to it. I think that also, this is a great opportunity if your New Year's resolution happened to be read more books. This is your opportunity to read a new and exciting book. So the book for this month will be Luster by Raven Leilani. And this book came out last summer. And I've heard generally really good things about this book. I did a little look on Goodreads. I read some reviews and I noticed that it got a lot of attention in a lot of magazines and newspapers, and it got on a lot of really good book lists. So I thought it would be a great book for us to read. Just one sentence about what the book is about. The book follows a Black woman in her 20s who gets involved with a 40-something white man in an open marriage. So I think it'll be very dramatic and interesting, and it will just bring up a lot of cool themes.
I'm also very curious to read it because, I want to understand how, even just one version of what an open marriage could look like.
Yeah.
I have no real reference point or concept of what an open marriage entails.
I also love the vagueness of that one sentence summary because personally I love going into books knowing okay, this is good, and I trust Liesel with all of my reading anything because she's a reading queen. So I love that I'm going in knowing this is good, but not really having an idea as to what it was. And my book arrived in the mail and it's so beautiful. So I really, really encourage people to read for a lot of reasons, but at the very least, the cover is really pretty and sparkly and nice colors, and it's not that long. So if reading is intimidating to you, I think this is such a great place to start because you have the three of us and all the rest of the wise babies to do it with you.
Yeah, it's only 240 pages, which is really not that intimidating in my opinion. And I also heard that it's funny. So I think that this will be an interesting test to see if we actually find it funny or if it's humorous, or I think it's it'll be a good mix of fun and funny and dramatic and deep.
Is
and
it
obviously
supposed to be sexy?
I do think I mean, come on, a Black woman in her 20s who gets involved with a 40-something man in an open marriage, there's got to be some sexy times going on.
And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the name of it alone, I feel like is evoking sexy.
Yeah, totally. And the cover art and all of that stuff. And obviously, Gigi bringing up the polyamory open relationship question calls back to one of our very earliest episodes, the Polypod. And so maybe we'll have some new takes and opinions on that topic.
Totally.
I am very excited to get to reading.
So that episode will be coming out at the end of January.
So order the book, and I'm so excited to talk about it. Okay, so for this episode, we are going to be discussing travel, the traveling we have done, the traveling that we hope to do, all things of the sort. So I would love to open up this topic by discussing our general thoughts, feelings, things we have learned about travel.
I will say I do really enjoy travel, and I don't mean to make it seem like I don't, because I do have wanderlust, if you will. But at the same time, when I'm asked this question, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm a little bit sometimes I think it's a little overhyped or overrated. And I don't mean to suggest that I don't love travel and that I'm not fiending with every fiber of my being to get to do some travel right now. But I feel the devil's advocate in me wants to be sometimes it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Totally. And like, that's the thing. You never see like when they lose your luggage or that awful long flight or like waiting in lines forever on Instagram. You know what I mean? You see like the cliff diving and the beaches and all of that sort of
Well, and
stuff.
not even just on Instagram necessarily, like people choose to remember, they
Remember.
selectively remember the best parts about vacation.
Yeah,
I also
totally.
think the word travel specifically, what it evokes for me is like the act of traveling, not the part where you get there and are enjoying all of the picturesque moments, but like getting on a plane, being on the plane, which is something I really don't like. I am not good at flying. It is not for me. The smell of the airport, that is another thing I really don't like. People clapping when you land, I don't like that. I also think this is a great time to bring up one of my pet peeves, which is when people take their shoes off on the plane. I think it's disgusting and I absolutely want to discourage that behavior. So like the actual act of traveling is not something I particularly enjoy, and that does kind of taint the experience. So Gigi, I understand what you mean.
And
May I
to
also ask, I just want to, I have a question about Lily's feet and the airplane
yeah,
shoe thing.
that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about as
I
well.
just, my question is, Lily, is it like just them taking their shoes off thinking that they could get comfortable in this shared space, or is it when you can actually smell the smell of their feet? Like, I'm not personally offended if someone takes their shoes off if I can't perceive it in any way other than sight, because like your feet expand when you fly. Like, you gotta get comfortable, especially if it's a long flight.
I'm not here to be the comfort Grinch. Like, I want people to be comfortable, obviously. But it's just that I just feel like you don't care about my travel experience because I don't want your feet, whether they smell fine, neutral, or not. Like, you're risking that they don't smell good and then you're ruining my experience. I would love if we could come up with a way for people to take their shoes off and we don't risk any smelling, any their feet. Like if I am in a close flight, like your feet touching me, that's too much of a risk for me. And then the whole flight I'm on edge because I don't like the feet aspect.
Okay, so this is purely a smell and olfactory situation. This is not a visual issue for you,
I
or
mean,
is it?
it's not visual inherently, but I do have an issue when your feet are very close to me. Like when
Okay,
your
sure. But
bare feet are
that's
like
unrealistic.
approaching
I don't think that's
my
gonna happen.
bubble.
But are socks allowed?
Yeah, I'm not offended by that.
Yeah, so
Oh,
who takes their full-on socks off during a flight? No one does that.
I've never seen that in my life.
This pet peeve is motivated by specific instances where this has happened. It's been terrible.
Where someone
Listen,
takes their shoes and socks off.
Yes.
okay. I don't know. Like I'm just trying to give people the benefit of the doubt, and like I definitely am like take my shoes off and just have my socks on during a flight type of person. But like I could see a world where like let's just say I was wearing flip-flops for some reason, which I wouldn't do. Like wearing flip-flops is like equal to like not having shoes on. So like if you just flip your flops off, like there's shouldn't be an issue
Or
there.
no, but it's not even about flipping your flops off. Like,
You're
just
you're
as
already
much,
exposed.
you're
Yeah.
having just as much exposure to flip-flop feet as
But why I say that is because like typically when you're wearing flip-flops, your feet aren't gonna smell because
right.
like
They're
they
just
have plenty of room to breathe.
Yes.
So they shouldn't smell. So it's really just and like flip-flops are just as assaulting to the eyes. Like they're not like preventing any, visual distress.
So do we think the conclusion of this is that you should wear flip-flops on the plane or you should not wear flip-flops on the plane?
No, open toe
No.
flight is not okay. Open
No.
toe flight is not okay with me.
Well, the
No.
other thing that would be very wrong with that is that you would have to go through security barefoot, in which you would definitely contract a foot disease.
I mean, I don't think you'd contract a foot disease just walking on the linoleum floor of an airport. But we all know how I feel about the granules that touching my bare feet, and I don't want that.
Okay, but here's the thing that I think is like I truly believe that airplane companies need to do better. Okay. Most other industries and services and like places that you go, they're trying to give you good service, right? And I feel like there's so many airlines that you go on and you feel like they're trying to hurt your feelings and make you feel bad and yucky in the back there. So, my personal belief is that just like at many nice luxury hotels when they give you those like little slippers, that you get to keep and take home, I believe that airlines, it should be their responsibility to provide slippers for everyone. Not like, I'm not saying like Uggs, or anything ridiculous, but just those little like papery, little nice slippers, and everyone can put those on. No one has to worry about their feet expanding and busting open their new Louboutins.
Listen, I think that if it's a flight that you would get a pillow and a blanket on,
Yeah, you should get slippers.
you can get the slippers. Like
I
that
completely
checks
agree.
out for me. That could be a Liesel's law.
Yeah, that's a Liesel's law. Check.
That's a great one.
Maybe I should open my own airline though, because I really feel like this is an industry where we could revolutionize the game, and make everyone have a very good, pleasant experience.
Okay, look,
like-
Liesel, if you're starting an airline, I have a somewhat controversial request.
Okay.
I would like child-friendly and child non-friendly flights.
Oh my God, Lily, you're a genius. You literally like your IQ is 1,000 right
Thank
now.
you.
Listen, this is kind of the same as my Nathan for you idea that it's an airline or like flights chartered just for
Babies?
pregnant women in their
right.
pregnant women in their third trimester and doctors with delivery rooms so that they can fly places.
Okay,
But
Gigi, there's a big difference between
listen. I think that this idea of the baby flight and the non-baby flight, you pay a premium price to be on a
to bring your
non-baby
baby.
flight, and you can pay a slightly less price to be on the no baby flight.
Well,
And
if we introduce
No.
that, I'm worried that people are not going to take it seriously. So I do think the price should be the same because I don't think you need to be penalized for having a child. Like, I don't think you should have to pay more.
No,
But
I think you should have to pay more for having a child because, like, to be honest, like, just stay home with your baby. Like, your baby doesn't need to go
No, you're not
nowhere.
understanding-
When
you're
I
not
see a
understanding
baby
that.
at a hotel, at like a nice hotel, and I see a baby in the pool, I'm like, this baby should be at home. They don't need to
No,
be on
you're not
vacation.
listening to what
They're
I'm saying.
2 months old.
I'm saying like I think that the price to be on the non-baby flight is more because it's more of like a luxury to be on the non-baby
No,
flight.
I
And
get
then
what you
if-
mean.
And then to fill the baby flights, because there's no way you're gonna have a full baby flight if you want to pay a lower price as a non-babyer, you can go on the baby
okay,
flight.
that's fair. I agree with that.
No,
That sounds
yeah, I
great.
agree. But what I also think is highly unethical is the fact that babies are free on airplanes because they don't
Highly
take up the
unethical.
seat. That's highly, highly unethical and immoral, in my opinion. And
Well, okay, go ahead.
like the baby is such a nuisance to everyone else on that aircraft, okay? And yet there's no preventative measure for like every person on your flight except you could be holding a baby in their lap for free. It costs more to bring a dog on the plane than it does to bring another human.
That's actually true, Liesel. That is so
Yeah.
bizarre.
I
And like,
do
What's up with that?
cause more of a problem. Like without a doubt, without fail, the babies will cause a problem.
Yeah, and like I've been on plenty of flights with pets and dogs and animals, and it's always been amazing. Like I've gotten some puppy cuddles, and I've never been bothered.
Never once been bothered by an animal on a flight, but babies consistently.
Yeah.
I've never been bothered by an animal either, but I do think there are maybe some people who are. So maybe, Liesel, if you're opening an airline, you could also do like pet friendly and non pet friendly flights. I mean, I would rather be on the pet friendly flight. But I'm sure that people maybe would be drawn to that if they're like allergic or they're not into animals. Maybe that's a way for you to make an extra $10 per person because you can
And I
charge
think-
a little more.
I think that the pet aircrafts, as well as, in my opinion, the baby aircrafts, should be special fitted to suit those needs. So,
Uh-huh.
for example, one thing that makes me really sad is that bigger dogs. Sorry, we're on such a tangent. Like we were planning on talking about travel, and now we're talking about my new airline company. But
Well, I have more things to say about your new airline company after you shared this.
okay. So bigger dogs get put in the underbelly of the aircraft, which is so sad. So my airline would not do that. And if you have a larger dog, you can bring it on. So there's maybe like some little like playpens or like ways like little seats for the dogs or something like that. And for the babies, like we'll just have cribs. Like it'll just be like fitted out with like a bunch of cribs.
Well, that's similar to my idea
Okay.
of having like, it's mostly a regular flight and then like 2 delivery rooms. Okay, but listen. What I have to say about your new airline, Liesel, is it sounds all fine and dandy, but it's not like these other airlines like that already exist can't be doing the stuff you're talking about. It's just that like flying is super expensive and flying is super taxing on the environment. So it's like cramming more people in is better, kind of all around. But like, it's just a matter of paying the premium price for like a more luxurious experience or enjoyable experience. Because when you think about it, it's basically like public transportation. Like it's just a way to get from one place to another. But Liesel, if you could figure out how to get your aircraft to be electric, then I think you've really hit the jackpot.
I will be partnering with Elon Musk.
Right.
Who
On
is
this
now
project.
the richest man in the world.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah, he
How did
beat
that
Jeff
happen?
Bezos. I don't know, but like literally yesterday or 2 days ago, he is now the richest man in the world.
Dude,
That's very interesting.
XAE12 is the heir to a crazy fortune.
Gigi, you keep forgetting that
There are
XAE
other
has
children.
siblings.
I
Yeah.
know XAE12 does have siblings, but just XAE12 is so futuristic that I feel like he's gonna get everything. They will get everything.
Yeah, they might. But that's crazy. Yeah, so my airplanes will be electronic powered. There was something I was going to say about that. Oh yeah, also as you're boarding the aircraft, because Elon is my business partner, the music that will be playing is Grimes, and all of the flight attendants will dress like Grimes. So they all have like fun hair, and it's really like an immersive experience.
That sounds like a great idea. Okay, so now that we've finished this very long tangent, let's get back to our discussion on travel more generally. Gigi, I know that you have taken classes on this. Will you share with us what you have learned?
Sure. So I have taken a few different classes during my study abroad experience, which we will get into more a bit later. Just centered around the study abroad experience, being a traveler, if you will, being a tourist, also being a sojourner, which if you're not familiar with this new word, it is essentially like living somewhere temporarily, but it's not traveling, but it's not like moving somewhere. So it is essentially like what study abroad is. But this one class that I took specifically was about reading various books and watching various movies around the experience of traveling, being a tourist, or being an exile. So, but the majority of the class was about tourist versus traveler and kind of what that looks like and what that means. And essentially, it's just that like a tourist is going to engage with the new culture in a more superficial, less spontaneous way. And typically like isn't going to be that likely to break the expectations of like going to the special spots of like landmarks, like where everyone goes, and just take your picture and leave and that sort of thing. Whereas traveling is more about like having an authentic engagement and exchange with the culture that you're immersing yourself in. And I don't mean to like highly praise the latter in that description. That's just kind of how we were taught to talk about these two things, because I think that there is an argument for traveling as being superior to being a tourist because there is a more genuine exchange and maybe a deeper understanding of the self and of the other in that mode of exploration as opposed to being a tourist. But I think this just opens conversation for us to discuss what it's like to be one versus the other. And as I said, I don't mean to poo-poo being a tourist because there is a time and a place.
Yeah, and I think like, I really don't think that there's a problem with being a tourist in a lot of situations and, taking in landmarks, historical sites, going to museums and like getting an understanding of the culture in a way that is not necessarily like the same as someone who lives there. Like I can completely understand that as like a valid want and a valid experience to have in my opinion. And I feel like one of the main differences between being a quote unquote tourist versus being a traveler would be your engagement with people, right? So it's how much are you exchanging culture with other people? And that's kind of something that makes me think about like I could have just as much of a cultural exchange with someone sitting at home in America who just happens to be from another culture. Like I could learn and grow as much with their culture as they could with mine and all of that kind of stuff as I could in their home country. You know what I mean? And so for me, like putting too much emphasis on like like going on a trip and being like I need to like meet all of these locals, I need to go to the local spots, I need to have the local experience. It's like, well, then like a local experience in my opinion everywhere, like not that it's the same, but their daily life, in many places across the world is pretty similar. Everyone wakes up, goes to their job, presumably does whatever, goes to restaurants, you know, like life is life. And I think that especially now in this time with everything being so global and modern, like, you're not going to go to Italy, for example, and experience as striking of a difference in the culture in Italy, like now, as you would have 100 years ago. You know what I mean? So that's the only reason that I'm like, you have to find a balance of doing these quote unquote touristy stuff because you want to experience like locationally and like the landscape, the sites, and all of that sort of stuff. And you also want to interact with people,
Yeah, and this is a question that I sort of was exploring during this class of like, do the landmarks or like the, standout conventional things that you think of associated with a certain city, are those the heart and soul of the city, or is that what makes the city, or is it the local experience? And obviously it doesn't need to be one or the other, but especially when I think of LA specifically, I'm like, there is so much power in like Hollywood, let's say. Like there's so much history and interesting stuff there to learn about, but there is also like so much more to the city than just those like few, or like the Santa Monica Pier. Again, that's a place that's like could be looked at as a touristy spot, but it's also kind of can be a part of the local experience to a certain extent. So I feel like again, it's finding that balance and understanding that like, or sorry, I am coming up with more examples like the Eiffel Tower. It's like when that's just something that's as much as it can be part of your everyday life, it's a like symbol of something, and even if you are passing by it on your way to work every day, like it still means something.
Yeah.
And it is still the heart and history of the city in some way.
Absolutely. And I think that balance is so important. And I know for me, and I think for most people, how much you balance traveler versus tourist and the emphasis that you place on one versus another, or how you engage with that, I feel like is so personal. And that's maybe what differs from person to person. Like, for example, on my study abroad experience, I feel like I really did the traveler aspect of it. Like, I lived in a Spanish home, I did a lot of the cultural exchange that we've been talking about, but I do not feel like I touristed enough. Like, I never got to see Sagrada Familia and whatever else. And I think that for me, that left me feeling sort of unfulfilled in a way. And I don't think that I struck that perfect balance. And I think that it was through traveling and figuring it out that you can find, okay, I need 50% tourist, 50% traveler, or any percentage of it to figure out what leaves you feeling like your traveling was worth your while.
And I think another like kind of major criterion for traveler is like a a comfort in discomfort, if that makes sense, or like being okay with not adhering to like a checklist, or not feeling like there has to be this expectation or pressure on what you're going to do or accomplish. And so like I guess that in that sense we can place traveler as like above tourist, in the sense that it's it just takes a slightly more flexible attitude with traveling. Whereas tourism or like being a tourist can sometimes look like, let me get the checklist, let me do all the things I'm supposed to do, let me see all the things I'm supposed to see. And like, then I'm set, you know, and like, let me take my pictures there. And then I've had the experience. Whereas traveling, you know, at least the way that we spoke about it in my class was a bit more like you're a little bit more free flowing, where it's like, okay, if you want to go to the touristy spots, obviously you do your thing, but like be open to the possibility of other experiences and the local experiences and whatever exchanges come your way. And I think like speaking to what you're saying, Lily, about being in Barcelona and like having had the quote unquote traveler experience there, a lot of kids in our class were consistently saying like, I feel like I've reached a point where I'm a comfortable traveler or sojourner or whatever in Barcelona. But when I go somewhere for the weekend, I'm like, I'm here for a couple of days. I'm going to do the touristy version of this city. Like, let's go.
I do also feel like traveler and tourist, the relationship between the two, I do think that one enriches the other and vice versa. Like, for example, when I think about being abroad, which is where I did the most traveling, so that's the most immediate example that comes to mind, getting to do the touristy things that were just like taking pictures and whatnot enriched maybe my more cultural experiences because I know more about the city and I'm able to talk about with, let's just say, the local people this thing that I did and understand it from a tourist perspective and then get the traveler perspective. So I do think that you need one to have a valuable experience with the other. And it is just striking that correct balance, which again, I believe is so personal and where that falls is unique to each person.
Yeah, and I also think like it is kind of a little bit elitist in a certain way, or not necessarily elitist, but it is just like you have to have all of these specific conditions going on in order to really become a traveler, in my opinion. Like you have to honestly know someone, or like just so happen to meet someone and form like a close enough relationship with this stranger in a new place to like, you know, you need to get to know locals. And like the amount of times that you're going to travel somewhere in your life and like actually like really get to know locals, like that's hard to do, you know? And so I think like giving grace and like understanding the fact that like a lot of people are not in that position where they're going to visit somewhere where they have friends or family, because like I know for myself, whenever I've had like the most immersive traveling experiences, it's because I've had friends or family or people who like live there and really can understand and like teach me that culture of being a local, you know?
I feel like, especially just bringing it back to my class where I said we read certain books and watched certain movies, like time and time again, the character progression and the tourist to traveler transition is one that's more so like a state of mind. And so I totally get what you're saying, Liesel, and I totally agree. Like it is a little like unrealistic to expect people to be able to create these like authentic, spontaneous experiences everywhere you go. And like I said, there's a time and a place, you know, like you're not going to have that experience everywhere you go. But watching these movies or reading these books, like the experience, it becomes clear when you think of it more as like a state of mind. You know, like you watch these characters go from like adhering very strictly to a schedule or like having these expectations of something or like feeling a certain level of pressure to do what they're supposed to do, and then somewhere along the way become more comfortable with the idea of like, you know, whatever this experience is going to look like naturally and organically is wonderful and perfect as it is, and I'm ready to welcome whatever comes my way.
And I think that also, like one of the more negative ways to view the word tourist or the phrase is like, to be honest, a lack of respect. And like, I think that growing up in LA, there are definitely a lot of tourists who come here and don't act respectfully. And that's LA. Like, it's not like it's some, you know, super cultural, like important place in the world. So I can only imagine what it's like to live somewhere that has huge cultural significance and like see people come and just like, you know, basically shit all over it by being disrespectful, whether that's like with religion or just culture in general. Like I can't imagine what that's like, knowing that like people who come here as tourists just they don't have the same respect or appreciation or like thoughtfulness, you know, as locals would.
I do think that on the same vein of how being a traveler is somewhat dependent on this elitist idea of like knowing people and an unrealistic expectation, I do think it's important to say that like I believe there are other ways to give yourself more of a traveler experience and a tourist experience, whether that's through the food you eat or the language you're speaking. Like I think that there's other ways. Let's just say you don't have a connection in a place, so you're not able to meet local people. Okay, well, maybe you find a random restaurant on the street and have a more open-minded idea about the food you're going to eat and just like try to immerse yourself in like local culture via food. Maybe if it can't be through people, like I do think there are other ways to achieve that, and I completely agree that a lot of them are somewhat unattainable for people, so I recognize that, but I think there are some that are more attainable than others.
Right. And I just want to emphasize, like, I totally agree with what you're saying, Lily, that what I've sort of outlined for us and what we've talked about in my class is not that it has to be through local people or that it has to look a certain way. And so doing something like just walking into, you know, a place that you find that looks cute rather than like searching up on Yelp, like best place in Paris or whatever, which there's nothing wrong with that, especially because like oftentimes things are the best or are touted as the best for a reason. So like go have the best, you know? But I think like as you're saying, Lil, there are so many different ways to go about it. It's all about the mindset. And I think as I started off by saying, there's a time and a place. You just do what feels right. And it I think is good to think about it before traveling, think about it while you're traveling, and think about it after as you're reflecting on your travel, like what, you know, range of the experiences you've had.
Yeah, and I
Absolutely.
think like even within the United States, like there's such a variety of different places that you can go and experiences that you can have. And I know that New Orleans is somewhere that is close to Lily's heart and that it's a place she's been many times. And I've been once and I went for a weekend. And I do find it interesting to consider like how different the New Orleans that Lily probably knows was than like what I experienced. And I'm sure that it's like that all around the world, you know?
Well, Liesel, I like that example a lot because I think this is a perfect example to actually illustrate the whole thing of balance, which I think that I have had exclusively a traveler perspective of New Orleans. I've done very few of the quote unquote touristy things because it is where my most of my family lives, and when I go I am doing their daily life things. And I think that you, correct me if I'm wrong, had nearly an entirely tourist perspective of it. And when I think about New Orleans, I don't think, wow, I have had such a fulfilling, or I have such a like full complete idea of it. I feel like there's a piece missing. So I think that's such a perfect way to say I have been to New Orleans way more times than I can ever count, and I am so familiar with it. I can name streets, I could talk about it for a while, but I don't feel like I'm at all a pro in it because I haven't had that balance. It's so heavily skewed towards just the traveler side of it, and I feel like I need some tourist in there to give me this well-rounded perspective on this place that I'm so comfortable with.
Yeah. I mean, my New Orleans experience was like drunk beignets and like wearing beads and like doing all of like the most touristy stuff. But I do think that like I did get glimpses into normal everyday life as well. Specifically, especially in New Orleans with like Uber drivers and any like cab drivers that we happen to interact with. And I do think that in general, that's a good point of contact because usually people who drive people around are pretty down to talk about the city and talk to you and get to know you. And obviously they're usually locals. And we just got like such a mixed bag of like some Uber drivers who hated us, like clearly were not happy that we were there, we're not happy that we were drunk, like just were not into us at all. And we had others who, you know, were down to like help us have a fun experience, you know. But that was definitely like a good glimpse into kind of how the city also interacts with its tourist population as well, you know?
I also think it's interesting, you know, all three of us can approach the LA experience from the local perspective. And I do genuinely think that that is a city like I don't want to say unlike others, but so much more than most other cities where having a local knowledge base or like having a person that you can reach out to who can kind of guide you is like invaluable, because I feel like so many people go to LA and just, I'm not going to say they have the wrong experience, because everyone's various experiences are great just the way that they are, but I feel like a lot of people have a negative experience when they travel to LA, where they're like, oh, there's so much traffic and there's this and that and blah blah blah. And I feel like there are so many people who did not get to have the like enjoyable experience that you could have as someone who's visiting with the help of a guide or a local person.
Yeah, definitely. And like when you're a tourist and you go to visit New York, you can walk around everywhere, and like even just walking on the street is like a local experience. You know what I mean? Like you're getting the vibe, like it's all good. But in LA, like you need to know how to get around, you need to know the different neighborhoods. Like there's just so much more complicated stuff in navigating that.
Absolutely.
I think one thing I would like to talk about, which will sort of naturally segue us into study abroad if we're ready for that portion of the conversation, is about the amount of time that you get to spend somewhere. Because I think that a lot of people really overvalue time in a place. And that's not to say that more time doesn't give you, more of an opportunity to get to know a place, because of course it does. But I don't think that you need more time in order to have maximum enjoyment of a place. And obviously that ties pretty closely into like the weekend experience of traveling somewhere during the study abroad process, but it also can apply to other situations where people are traveling and they want to hit several different cities, and whatever, you're doing a few days in one place and a few days in another and kind of bopping around.
The first thing that comes to mind when I hear you say that, G, is something that my grandpa has said to me my whole life, who my grandparents are the most well-traveled people I've ever met, because they've been to all continents except for, well, they've never been to Antarctica. But anyways, they've been everywhere, and I really value their travel advice and experience and love talking to them about it. And every time I have traveled with them, my grandpa has always said, you have to leave something for the next time to come back to and to look forward to. Like you can't get through everything, because then you would have no reason to keep traveling. And I think that is so valuable, because in my study abroad experience, when I was in different countries that I have never been to, I was there for 2 days maybe, and there's no way that you can pack in everything you want to do in that time, no matter where you are. And I remember always thinking like, okay, it's fine, because it's a reason to come back, it's something to look forward to. And I can completely agree that if you plan right and you know yourself well enough to understand what you value in your traveling, time is not everything, and it is so much more about the experience, so you don't need to be there for ever and ever and ever. And then the things that you don't get to, you do the next time.
I think one opinion that I hold, which maybe I'm not gonna, I'm prefacing this with it's an opinion, but obviously that's subject to change. I feel like, as I stand by what I'm saying, that like time doesn't matter that much, and I agree with everything you've just said, Lily. But thinking on my study abroad experience, I think there were some people who made the mistake of prioritizing hitting as many cities as they could. And I think that that can be a mistake. I'm not saying it's always a mistake, but like there were people who were gone every single weekend, hitting multiple cities in a weekend, like traveling throughout a country in a matter of 48 hours. And I just, and with the like intention of being like, I need to hit as many cities or as many places or as many countries as possible. And I feel like that can be can lead to just sort of like, I don't want to be like judgmental, but a potentially superficial experience with the various cultures, or like you're not getting the most out of it, and you would have gotten more out of just like prioritizing a few spots. And on top of that, I feel like the people who were traveling every weekend never got to fully appreciate the place that they were staying in, so there's also that aspect to it.
I feel like this perfectly describes something that something that I was saying earlier about how travel is so personal, which I know we were all agreeing on. And like, gee, I agree with you completely. I don't think that hitting a million cities in a weekend is the right way to do it. Like for me, that I would not feel like I was doing it right. But I do think that maybe that is right for some people. And if that is how you feel fulfilled, like being able to say, like, I went here, I ate a meal here, and then I left, like, if that is right for you, okay. And I just think that goes to show how personal and unique to each individual travel is. And that is why it's important that, like, when you're traveling with people, you see travel in the same way. And I think that's why traveling can be contentious, and picking the right travel partner, for lack of a better word, is so valuable, because I think there are absolutely people in the world, and like, I'm not telling them they're wrong, but like hitting a million cities, like, no, sorry, not for me. But like, if that is for you, we should not be traveling together because it's not going to work. And like, you should have your person to hit all the cities with, and I should have my person to like relax in the same city for 2 days.
Yeah. And I think like with the study abroad experience, I, I do think that some people go and study abroad and basically are like, I'm going to Europe and I'm going to see all of Europe, and then I'm probably never going to go to Europe ever again. So from that perspective, like I can understand like if people are like, I want to like leave it all out on the table because I'm here, so I might as well see as much as possible. Like if I was told on my study abroad, you're never going to Europe again, like I do think I would have put more effort into seeing more places. But I feel like I went with the luxury and the idea in mind that I would probably get to go back to Europe and go to more countries and experience more stuff. But I definitely agree about like the amount of time. Honestly, I feel like oftentimes if you're in a place a shorter amount of time, you get more done. Like I truly feel that way. And I know in high school, Gigi and I went with our mom to Paris, and we were there for like a full week. And it was amazing. And I was so grateful for it and I loved it. But like I definitely felt like at a certain point, we had kind of seen what we wanted to see. And while we were still enjoying the food and enjoying everything a lot, you get tired and you just kind of want to relax after a certain point when you've been somewhere for up to a week or more. And I truly feel like then later on, when I went to Paris, when I was studying abroad and I was there for 2 days, like I genuinely feel like I did more in those 2 days than I did in a week with my family. And so I definitely think like sometimes condensing something into a shorter amount of time makes you just like appreciate it more and makes you have this more like go, go, go mentality. And you kind of do get to really enjoy and like experience as much as you want.
I do also really appreciate the point that Lily brings up about travel buddies.
Mhm.
And I think that this is study abroad or no study abroad, it's an important travel and vacation topic. So, if we go on a bit of a tangent, I'm personally okay with that because I do really feel like it is such a blessing to get to travel with people that you're on the same page with. And on the flip side to that, it is such a curse to be traveling with people that you are not on the same page with. And that could be in terms of what you want to do, the amount of money you want to spend, what you want to see, how you want to go about it, what food you want to eat. Like, who knows? This could be so many different aspects of travel and vacation, but like, a lot of the time you won't know some of these things until it is right there in front of you. And I feel like this applies for international travel, this applies for road trips, this applies for all kinds of different travel.
I also think that this is like a roommate situation of like someone can be your best friend and you are not compatible as roommates. It has nothing to do with who you two are. You're just not good roommates. Someone could be your best friend and they are not your travel partner because you are just on different pages, and that sucks and whatever. But I just think that is so important because I know from my study abroad experience, I saw that. Or someone can be your like not that good friend at all. I know I was on one trip with a bunch of people that I didn't know that well. And some of the people that I really did not know at all, we were very on the same page about like what we wanted to do while we were there, how we wanted to fill our time. And that was great. And I barely knew them. So I think it is a situation where you have to strike a perfect balance. And the only way to do it is trial and error because, again, someone can be your friend and then you go on a trip with them and you're like, they are way too regimented or whatever it is. And you have to like try it to figure it out.
Yeah, totally. And like there really are so many different types of travelers, and people like do their vacations and their travel in very different ways. I have always enjoyed some of my friends from college are like huge planners in advance. So like before we go on a trip for like spring break or something, like they'll literally send like Monday night we'll be eating lunch here and we'll be eating dinner here. Tuesday we'll be eating lunch here and going here. And then when we actually get there, it's a lot more like play it by ear and like, do we actually want to go to this place that they had scheduled, or we can just blow it off? And I really like that strategy of travel because I do feel like I have gone to some places, right? And I'll get to the city and I'll hear like XYZ is like the best restaurant. You have to go to it. And then there's no reservations and you can't just like walk in. And you're so disappointed that you don't get to go to that place. So I really do enjoy the strategy of like try to plan and like book stuff in advance, but then have the mentality of like, we'll see how we actually feel when we get there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like in that situation, I'm not saying that you're not Liesel, but like traveling with people that are like very organized and like on top of having plans, if you're not, can really be to your benefit. And maybe if both of you are very planny, then like there could be some disagreement. But if one person's a little more laid back and one person like is more wanting to organize every single event, I could see that being a nice balance of the two.
Yeah,
I do
totally.
also want to bring up, Lily had mentioned travel versus vacation. And what that means for me is travel is going somewhere to do stuff. Vacation is traveling somewhere to do nothing. And I mean, like, obviously, it doesn't have to be that strictly like separate or different, but I feel like that is the difference in my mind. Of vacation is I'm going somewhere to relax and recharge, and when I'm traveling I'm going somewhere to, you know, see the culture, eat the food, do the stuff, be, you know, in it. Whereas vacation, I'm seeing myself more in a resort, I'm seeing myself on the beach, I'm seeing myself getting a massage, I'm seeing myself frying in the sun, you know.
My ideal vacation has a sprinkle of travel, and my ideal travel has a sprinkle of vacation. Like, for example, when I went to Tulum in Mexico, like the majority of the time was like laying on the beach, just like chilling out, swimming in the water, doing very relaxed activities. But then we also like went out a bunch and we went and saw the Mayan ruins. So like it was a perfect blend of like relaxation, but also like seeing some stuff, like enjoying the town, like interacting with other people, going to different places and stuff like that. And I feel like that to me is like my perfect recipe for a vacation, because if I go somewhere and their only thing there is to do is be at the beach and there's like even no activities, like I definitely do get kind of bored. But speaking a little bit about travel buddies, and the type of travel buddy that I don't get along with very well is the person who cannot sit still and cannot relax. And like I totally understand that and sympathize with that some people are just like that, like they need to constantly be go 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 and they don't enjoy just like laying out on the sand or by the pool. But like I cannot travel with you. Like and I know that for some people it probably wouldn't bother them, like they would just be like, yeah, just go do your activities, I'll be here. But it bothers me a little bit. Like I'm like, can you please just like chill for like 2 seconds? So that is one of my, unfortunately, like travel pet peeves. Like you need a balance. You need to be able to do both.
When I think of my perfect travel and the traveling I want to do in the future, which I think this is a great segue into our future travel plans, mine is like 70% vacation, 30% travel. So, for example, when my most favoritist vacation that I have ever been on was when my family and I went to the Dominican Republic, which is inherently a lay out on the beach, be in the ocean, eat the food type of thing. And we had one day of the, let's just say 7 days, where we went into the capital city and like went on a tour and did very touristy things, but got more of the cultural experience. And then the other 6 days, we got our tan on, we got our drinks on, we got our swimming on. That is beautiful. That is wonderful. That is how I feel fulfilled as a traveler, a tourist, a person. That is my perfect balance.
Totally. And I've definitely had like experiences where I have not hit that balance that I wanted. Like specifically, I went to Jamaica And it was great. Like I had so much fun, but I did not see, you know, a lot of Jamaica. I didn't see any like beautiful scenery or landscapes or like even a city. Like we were pretty much just like at the resort, and we left the resort once, and I don't think it was like a cultural experience. So that's definitely something that it's annoying when you look back and you're like, I'll probably never go to Jamaica again. Like maybe I will, I don't know. But I definitely missed out on a lot of like the natural beauty and stuff that I would have wanted to see.
I think my perfect calibration is when you get the opportunity to travel within one country and you do like a city where you're seeing the sights, you're doing the traveling stuff, and then you do a city that's like beach, pool, more of like a beachy town where yes, there's still like establishments and shopping to do and things to see, but it's more about the beach, or it's more about like that kind of aspect. And specifically when I went to Italy a few years ago now, we went to Rome and we did that whole experience. And then we did some south of Italy exploration. And that to me was like the perfect balance of getting to be kind of go, 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 see stuff, do things, and then get to go somewhere where it was a slightly different landscape and we got to relax a bit more, but still got to walk around and still do things and, you know, engage in the culture in some sense. So I feel like that's kind of my ideal travel vacation experience, is where you get to kind of go to two different cities or go to two different countries and get one of each kind of.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so as far as future travel, my like dream destination for sure is Tokyo. I feel like I've just never been anywhere even remotely close to that. I want to experience the food, experience the culture, and like in addition to Tokyo, like I would love to travel a little bit in Japan. And like get on one of those like super fast trains and like go somewhere else interesting in Japan. I just feel like there's so much culture and history and like cool stuff to experience. And so that has been my dream destination for a minute now.
Yeah, I would also like to go to Japan. I want to go to Kyoto. Um, I just feel like, I will admit, I find that travel intimidating because it is so vastly different from anywhere I've ever been. I don't even like know remotely how to speak the language or get around or do anything. So I feel like, you know, I have to admit that that is something to kind of work up to. And like also that I feel like, unfortunately, you got to kind of navigate your way through that discomfort when going to an entirely new place like that. Um, but I also would like to do plenty of other traveling in the future. I would love to go back to Europe. I would love to go to Australia. You know, almost anywhere that I have the opportunity to go, I would want to go, you know? So I'm pretty open-minded when it comes to my future travels, and I'm excited to see where I wind up.
So I have a few, and the first one that I want to say would be Thailand, but I don't think that type of travel is what I'm best suited for. I think, like you were saying, G, maybe I could work up to it, but like, let's be honest here, I don't think that that would be like the best place for me to go, being that I identify a lot more with the places where I can just like eat the food and feel connected in that way and do a lot of relaxing. So Fiji is a place that for as long as I can remember, I have really, really wanted to go. So that is another one. And then I would love to go to South Africa. And I really this one is like, I really want to ski outside of America. So either Canada or like the Swiss Alps is very interesting to me.
I've only ever skied outside of this country, which was once in Canada. I think it's pretty similar.
Okay. Well,
But
I think like we have lots of reasons to go to Canada, so maybe we can do that.
yeah, we do have a lot of reasons to go to Canada. Um, it's funny that you say that you don't think Thailand would be relaxing, because I do think that a lot of people go there and do have quite a relaxing experience.
I think it's the kind of thing where you go to the city, you go to Bangkok or wherever and like do that experience, and then you can also do more of like a resort experience.
Yeah.
I will say I would also really like the opportunity to travel in South America and Central America. I feel like it's a place that is sometimes overlooked, but I would really like the opportunity to travel there at some point.
Definitely.
I agree.
And Lily, also, Fiji used to be on my list until my Italian teacher in high school, who I trust with my life, told me that she went there and she was super disappointed. And she said like it just wasn't as nice as like the pictures, and the people weren't very nice to her. And like she just said it was really overrated. So
I will say, I think that maybe for some people, the experience of Fiji is like not worth all the travel to go to that location. But Lily, if I'm not mistaken, didn't your parents go on their honeymoon there?
Yes, which is a large part of the reason why I want to go there. And well, no, that is the reason, because they speak so highly of it. And I think that my mom and I are very compatible travelers and very similar travelers. So I trust my mom because she's my mother, but I also trust her for that reason. So yes, I do really, really want to go to Fiji. Okay, so to wrap up this travel discussion and get us into our recommendations, let's all go around and say somewhere that we would like to recommend our wise babies to travel to. So Liesel, will you start?
I would recommend going to India, which I think is also a place that sometimes gets overlooked when people are thinking of places to visit and travel to. But I had so much fun there. I had a really great experience, and I specifically loved seeing the Taj Mahal, which is just like something that I never thought that I would get the chance to see in my life. Like it's something you always see in history books and like postcards and stuff, and you just think that you would never end up there. And so actually being there and like getting to like touch it and be so close to it. Or I don't know if I actually touched it, but I got really close to it and like walked on it and, you know, went to the different levels and took plenty of pictures and stuff. And it truly is like such a wonder of the world. And so I think, you know, trying to travel to those places that you think you'll never see and then getting to see them is really cool.
Okay, G, where is your recommended travel location?
To be honest, I haven't given it that much thought, so I might wind up being like, oh gosh, darn, I should have recommended that place. But, and you know, I feel like I don't even need to recommend this because it just kind of goes without saying, but I have loved all of my travel within the beautiful country of Italy. Like, I just think it not only lives up to the hype, it surpasses the hype. Like, I love that country with all of my, you know, being. Like every city that I've been to, I've enjoyed so much, and the food is just like unbelievable. I think it's such a beautiful country. And I know that there are so many countries that are so beautiful and have great food and everything, but like I definitely have had just like such amazing experiences in Italy that I think I would be remiss to not mention it during this time.
Yes, that is somewhere that I want to go so, so badly. So I'm going to give a domestic recommendation, which
I
this
want.
is
I was thinking a domestic recommendation, but I couldn't think of any.
okay. Well, I was going to give an international recommendation, which was going to be Lisbon in Portugal, because it was my favorite place that I traveled to while I was abroad, because the people were so incredibly nice and the weather was spectacular, and it was just like unlike any other place I've ever been. So I basically did just recommend it, but I will give a domestic recommendation, or domestic to our American wise babies. And for anyone who knows me, this is really boring, so I am sorry, but I am going to recommend Telluride, Colorado, because it is just a place that holds a very near and dear place in my heart. And for anyone who skis, it's one of the top 10 skiing locations in America. And I think that it is a place where you could go and like get anything out of it. Like I think it's such a small town that it's unique to itself. And that is what I'm going to recommend because I love it very much.
I'll just add, as someone who has visited Telluride but is not a hardcore Telluridian as Lily is, it is a great place to visit if you're wanting a bit of natural immersion, if you will, whether it's the summer or the winter. It's a great place to be one with nature. But I think, you know, if nature isn't your jive, maybe it's not the best place to go because there isn't that much else to do if you don't have, friends and family there with you the way that Lilly does.
Yes, thank you for pointing out that important factoid.
And I would love to have the privilege and the honor of going to Telluride with Lilly one day. I've always heard such magical things about it, so I would love to experience it myself. And if I got to take you two girls on a vacation, I would take you guys to Miami, because I know that both of you girls probably have some skepticism about the city of Miami.
No, I'm really trying to go to Miami. Like, I know that I don't know why you're surprised. I've said this 1,000 times. For a few years, I had a really negative perception of Miami as like a really trashy, not cool place. And I'm not saying that like it is the best place on earth. I've never even been, but I've really opened my mind to the idea of it being like, kind of a cool, fun, like beach oriented city in America that also has like a fun nightlife. And it's obviously like a very culturally diverse place as well, with all of the beautiful Cuban energy that is radiating through it. Like I'm ready to eat the food. I'm ready to dance the night away. Miami, I'm coming for you.
I'm
Okay,
not skeptical
fabulous.
of Miami at all, but I am
Oh, wow.
incredibly skeptical of the state of Florida. But
Right.
I'm not
Right, I
skeptical of
mean-
Miami. But the state, you're on my list.
Right.
But I do think Miami, personally, I did not have the highest expectations for Miami. I didn't think it was going to be like as cool as it is, but it is a really unique blend of Art Deco, of like big high rises and big buildings, while also having like really nice beaches and like really white sand and clear water, which I feel like you usually don't get in the US. And on top of that, great food, great nightlife. So maybe one day we'll be able to record an episode of Sophomore Citizens in Miami.
So, to kick off our recommendations, I have this recommendation that has come to me in a brain blast while we were recording, as Liesel was talking about being a planner of vacation versus not, and like having some sense of where to go for food and what spots to hit. There's a YouTube channel that I found while I was abroad. It was sort of by chance. Like, I don't think I went looking for anything of this sort. It just sort of happened to be recommended to me, and it wound up being a super useful resource while I was abroad. It's this YouTube channel called Top Jaw, and it's these two guys who go around various cities traveling around Europe mostly, but they've also been to places in the US. They've been to places, I think, in Asia. Like, they're, obviously there's only two of them, so they're making their way through the world, but they basically do like 48 hours in a city, and they do like breakfast, lunch, snacks, dinner, drinks for like both days, as well as activities to do. And they always recommend like really cool, like both well-known spots, but also like kind of more low-key options. And it's just like, I think a great way to find slightly more unique but still well like approved or rated restaurants and whatnot while you're traveling. And also, like I said, they recommend activities or sites to see or things to do while you're in that place. And the videos are, maybe 10-15 minutes, and they're just like quick, fun, entertaining to watch, and exciting. Like, if you're going to go somewhere and they have a video for the city that you're going to be in, it's exciting because you're like, wow, I'm walking away with literally like 20 recommendations of things that I could do while I'm there. And I know that while I was traveling during my study abroad experience, I would use their videos as like helpful tools of places that I knew I wanted to hit. For example, while I was in London, they had recommended to go to Seven Dials Market, which is like essentially this really cool, like hipster, if you will, like warehouse cafeteria with like a DJ playing. So there's all these, it's basically like food trucks, except they're in, they're stationed there. They're not like mobile, but it's that vibe of like, that gastronomic food that's really good, and like, all kinds of different cuisines. So whoever you're with, everyone's going to be satisfied. And then there's like a common eating space and cool vibes and cool art. Like, I just never would have known of this place had it not been for that video. So I totally recommend. Oh, and like they give recommendations of different neighborhoods to go to as well for various cities. So like, cannot recommend Top Jaw enough if you are, first of all, fiending for a little travel content, like if you're just wanting to live vicariously, great channel to check out. Or if you're planning on doing some travel, they might have some recommendations for you.
And I have a recommendation for this episode, which is a beautiful pair of socks from the company Barefoot Dreams. They sell blankets, they sell sweatpants, they sell socks, and I'm sure that all of them are phenomenal. I have tried on the sweatpants, but honestly, the socks have changed my life in the past couple of days. I literally feel like I'm walking, and instead of walking on the ground, I am floating on clouds of heaven. So I highly recommend these socks, and I think that they'll just change your life.
I can also say, as someone who owns the sweatpants, they are incredible. They make my legs feel so happy and wonderful every time I put them on.
The material is just so unique and fluffy and soft and scrumptious and wonderful. And, we really appreciate that Kardashian recommendation. Thanks, girls.
Yes, thank you, Liesel. And thank you for listening to Sophomore Citizens, the podcast by young people for young people, with new episodes every Monday. So we'll see you wise babies then. And don't forget to follow us on TikTok and Instagram. And you could email us at sophomorecitizens@gmail.com if you want. We would love to hear from you. So we will see you wise babies soon. And please, please, please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review.